Kikank kank. Kikank kank. Kikank kank. We're back. That's right. We just jumped right in
it. Filling in my blacks.
Rendering. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Pencil to Pencil. Yes, you remember us, your old friends, those old salts. What up, EJB? Well, hello.
We're the old Epsom salts of comics.
Yo, I heard that if you are diabetic, you should not use Epsom salts in your bath because it causes swelling rather than reduces swelling.
There goes our sponsor.
Are we that old now? Damn. Yo,
Epsom
what up, that's our new after party podcast. Epsom salt and applesauce. Welcome to the podcast.
Werther's Originals and Gold Bond medicated powder bring you Pencil to Pencil.
We're not that old.
I had awful change until I was Gold Bond.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. If this is your first time watching, this is Pencil to Pencil, a creative fly on the wall style podcast where you, dear viewer, get to interact with three expert cartoonists live. I'd like to introduce ourselves. I'll introduce us, starting with myself. Hello, my name is Jamar Nicholas, cartoonist of letters.
And letterer of cartoons.
The king of cartoons. Mike is filling in the blacks over there. You see what he's doing. Philadelphia native and also proud author at Scholastic Graphics. My new book, Leon the Extraordinary, will hit stores in October of this year. I'm very excited. I am your first co-host. Joined at the proverbial hip is my best bud and Master Chief of Comic Illustration, Mike Manley. What's up, Mike Manley?
Hello, everybody. Welcome as we awake from our slumber of we were off for it since February, I think.
Yeah, it's been a while. That's like the beginning of Power Rangers where the chick comes out of the manhole cover. I'm alive. Watch my monster grow. And also, there's another face on the screen that you may be familiar with. Our best bud, Steve Conley. I like to call him. His nickname is usually whatever strip he's drawing. Some of my favorites have been Astounding Space Thrills, Steve Conley. But maybe apropos is middle-aged Steve Conley. Hello, Steve Conley. How are you? And welcome to the family.
Thank you. This is awesome. Long time listener, first time co-host.
That's right. What up, D Brad? Now, one thing that everybody needs to know up front is Steve Conley is not a stranger to Pencil. Steve has been the fifth man the whole time. Right?
Yeah.
And there was no fourth man. I was actually they were holding a spot for a fourth guy, but
he's the Scotty of the podcast.
Right.
That's right. He pours the dilithium crystals into the sink to make things work. So yeah, guys. So we're coming back to you. Thanks, Steve, for joining us. We're shaking things up this time. We took a nice respite. I got super busy. Mike is always busy, and when we finally came back, we're like, we need to kind of shake things up, make things a little different than they were before. And Steve's name kept popping up, and I thought, who would be a perfect co-host but our man Steve Conley. So Steve, welcome to the show. All of our penciliers, please give Steve a nice round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thanks, folks. And if you don't know who I am, I'm a cartoonist. I have been for a very, very, very long time. Like Jamar said, I write and draw the webcomic The Middle Age, which is on Webtoons and Tapas and Go Comics, and on my own website. And I've got a YouTube channel. I've got a Twitch channel, all that stuff. But I'm mostly a cartoonist, and then I do the web stuff, and that's how I've been pitching in behind the scenes for Pencil to Pencil for a while. So I'm excited to be here.
No, it's fantastic.
I mean, you have a long lineage of being involved in the internet side of comics all the way back to your Comic-Con.com days.
Yeah.
Before the internet blew up the first time.
I found a HyperCard stack that I was using to promote my original webcomics. Not webcomics. It was pre-webcomics. It was like a 1994. I made a HyperCard stack and uploaded it to, I don't know, AOL and all these places. CompuServe. Yeah. So I've been at this for a while.
Wow.
Is Comic-Con.com still up?
It is. It's not a forum the way it was. I mean, it was primarily message boards back in the day, and then the virtual booths. Now it's a news site, and I'm not involved in it anymore.
Wow. Yeah,
nice.
that's amazing. You brought that up, Mike. I almost forgot about ComicCon.com, and not for lack of trying. It's just kind of like we have gone so far back into this stuff. It's almost. Have you ever heard people say things like, "I've forgotten more stuff than you'll ever know"?
Right. Yeah.
You know,
well, that was also back during the digital webbing days and
WF Comics, and before CBR was still Comic Book Resources, and it was like the sound files from the old animated TV shows. It's pre social media. Hey, LJ.
Yeah. Or like proto social, because things were that's when almost everybody still got that AOL disc like 17 times a week in the mail,
Right, sure. Diskette, like not even a CD. It was like
at least you could overwrite those and put your 3 emails on it.
Yeah. So to give people a little bit of your history, what was your first web comic? The first thing you started doing was what, Steve? What was that?
I did some printed comics before I did web comics, and then my first web comic was called Astounding Space Thrills back in 1998, and so that ran until about 2000-ish. It ran for about 500 episodes. I started collecting them into books. I did a Kickstarter last year collecting some of those comics for the first time. That was exciting. But yeah, it's changed so much. There wasn't a share button back then. There wasn't social media back then. People had blogs, but they didn't, there was no Facebook, no Friendster, no MySpace, nothing yet.
Comic Space, remember that one?
Yeah. There's it's I think we wistfully remember them. Very much rose-colored glasses, but something like that would still be nice today. People talk about that all the time. I'm going to start a forum. But it's just hard to keep people engaged. There's Discord now, but again, just like when the blog showed up, suddenly everybody had their own little tiny community, their own little sliver of. So it wasn't the way it was back with Comic-Con.com. It was a lot more cross-pollination. It was more like, people who didn't have whose work would normally never interact with one another. It was a really cool time, but it was doomed to failure.
Well, one really interesting thing to point out, and what I really love about this pairing, which is always there's like the impossible mission force, right? So we have Mike Manley, a master of jujitsu, then we have be the master of prestidigitation. Is that we all kind of come from different parts of this thing. Like Mike may be, to a lot of our viewers, the traditional mainstream comic artist on one hand, but then Mike has reinvented himself so many times. He's touched every piece of this, right? Came in the big three, self-published, has been in animation, teaches, runs a magazine, does a podcast, teaches again. He's a painter, went back to school. Like you kind of touched all of the goalposts, right? And then somebody like myself who started out doing self-publishing, then got into early webcomics, and then got into a lot of stuff in between. And now I do graphic novels. And Steve, and this is the interesting point I wanted to get at. Steve is a webcomic pioneer. And webcomics is totally not what it was when you started.
No, it's not. It was, my webcomic was very popular when the internet wasn't very popular. It was a different time back then. But nowadays, I mean, we have all the wonderful crowdfunding opportunities, Kickstarters, Indiegogos, Patreon, Ko-Fi, or Coffee. All those different ways of PayPal wasn't a thing then. You know what I mean? There was that was a pipe dream that you could actually send somebody money that easily. So now's a kind of a perfect time to be doing webcomics. It was nice to start my latest webcomic 5 years ago, where I did have an audience that came from my previous projects that did help get it started, or give it a little more juice than it would have if I had started it cold. But
and you networked a lot in that. What? 10,
I talked to Jamar back in the day. Like, it was always about having my mailing list. I mean, every convention I go to, you
got the clipboard.
I want to get the email addresses. I want to, get in touch with my people. People want to stay in touch, and I can't trust social media to do it. And, as soon as you trust in one social media site to let you connect with people, they're suddenly like, no.
Yeah.
Or if you want it, they want you to pay. They want to monetize that.
Sure.
And one of the cool parts I think about this new configuration of pencil to pencil is that we can kind of like bounce off of each other. And I think Steve has brought a almost, dare I say, a new modern approach to how we're thinking about the business of comics, because Steve is on Webtoons. Steve is you're doing like 3D work on your stream, you know, and you're like all in this kind of part of the internet. I mean, part of the comic book world that Mike and I kind of talk about. And Mike, you've done some Webtoon stuff. Like, I haven't done
a Webtoon. I never finished it, but I did do a Webtoon, and then I helped Mimi work on her Webtoon. And so I was very interested in Webtoons, and in fact, I might do another Webtoon. But it's funny because it's sort of every 10 years, I think, timeline generationally in comics, there's sort of a resistance. Like, the people who are 10 years older than me or so, like Walt Simonson and Howard Chaykin, and on up to like Neil Adams, there's sort of a resistance in a lot of those people to want to do web stuff. They do the web stuff, they're on social media, but to them it's like comics is paper, comics is doing books. They don't really, I mean, both Walt and Howard are all over social media, but they're not doing web comics. It seems like you get to my generation, there's some people doing web comics, but I'm like 10 years or so older than you guys. There's more people in your generation, and then like now you go back another 10 or 20 years, everybody's doing. That's where they sort of start, because when we started, like when you did Astounding Space Thrills and you reprinted it, Diamond had minimum orders. There was all this other stuff that you had to go through with the distributor just to meet a certain amount of orders for them to even carry your book, and you don't have to deal with that now with the web.
Right, and a lot of those older cartoonists are always resistant to the thing that's new, because usually the thing that's new is not making a ton of money for people. I mean, Webtoons has their exclusive originals series, which those cartoonists are compensated well, but for the most part, if you're in the Canvas section, that's like being in the YouTube section. It's like, it's not, there's no guarantee of money. You have to build an audience to get to the part where you start making, pennies. So that's a hard sell for veterans with mortgages. So, so I understand why there'd be a resistance to that. Also, there's a status associated with the older systems because there are gatekeepers in place who have established the top 10, who've established the people who get these jobs. And once you have the web comics come around, once you have the internet come around, and anybody can do it, if you know a modicum of HTML, or a GeoCities page, or Facebook letting everybody publish, or Webtoons letting everybody publish.
Like, we have a podcast and we just push a button.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure there are people in radio who had the exact same, terrestrial radio or satellite radio, who have the exact same reaction to, who are these people? They haven't they haven't jumped through all the hoops. Most of us, the trouble is as well, is because the people who haven't jumped through the hoops generally haven't had to put in even a fraction of the 10,000 hours necessary to be expert in the field. And so you increase the noise to signal ratio a lot. And so
I scrolled for 10,000 hours. Doesn't that count?
You rub the
Yeah, my
the
fingers got
fingerprint off it.
10,000 hours worth of callus on it. Doesn't that count for something?
So
You know?
before we get a little deeper into this, I just want to let everybody know that tonight we pulled the soccer ball out and we're just going to kick it around on the pitch. Where this is almost like a warm up episode. We want to invite Steve into the fold and make him feel comfortable. And before we bring in another guest and do all that kind of stuff, this will be a great time for us to just kind of like talk to each other. For anybody that's watching live, feel free to put a question into the chat. Just to let you know that I'll do my best to put things on, but you're not guaranteed you're gonna get on the screen, bro. You're just gonna have to live with it. What did mom say? You get what you get, and you don't get upset. That's how that worked.
And then she hits you in the throat.
Blap. You get a fresh one, right? But let's start off with our good buddy Tim Fielder, who was on a early episode of Pencil to Pencil. Was a fantastic graphic novelist and a needle mover in the Afrofuturism sphere. So Tim says, I'm still working to find a comfortable balance with social traditional media, so I'm good there. However, in the self-publishing arena, Ingram Spark, you guys, has changed the game. We're in a different world. What's your take on Ingram? And maybe we'll start with you, Steve. How do you feel about the new kind of leg of self-publishing or print on demand?
I love it. I mean, it is so great. I mean, I use them for my hardcover books because the quality is excellent. The cost per unit doesn't scale the way you'd like if you were going to order, 10,000 copies or 5,000 copies or even 1,000 copies. The price doesn't come down enough. But in terms of if you want to, let's say you're a brand new cartoonist, you've been doing your webcomic for a year, you have 50 episodes, you can put those into a hardcover book and print 5 copies and have them at a convention. It is unheard of technology that, a few years ago. It's amazing. And not to mention there's the digital distribution part of it where you can either go through Ingram or go through KDP, Amazon's Kindle Direct Publishing. Mm-hmm. And I've got books that sell. I've got the only way to get softcover editions of my book is through Amazon, and those are all print on demand. All that took was uploading the file to their system, jumping through some hoops. You have to figure out, pick a category. You have to have the book has to have a title and a subtitle and all the other stuff that you have to do. It's like filling out a Windows 95 form. It's not the most cutting edge bit of interface, but you jump through those hoops, you upload a PDF, and your book is available to everyone in the world. So it's game changing. Rick Veitch is doing a lot of that. Almost all of his new self-published projects are all published. They're black and white for the most part through Kindle Direct Press. And that's very similar to Ingram, except Ingram lets you distribute widely to multiple, beyond just Amazon. So you can be available on other storefronts, things like that.
One of the things you were doing also when you were putting your comic out was you were getting covers by, in fact, today I just saw when I was on Twitter, the one that Drew Struzan did for you.
Oh, right.
So
how did he share that recently?
Huh? He was just sharing that today, I think.
I got to go see that.
You didn't see it?
No. That's stunning. Yeah.
How did you go about getting him to and was it an arm and a leg? This is the guy who does Star Wars posters.
Right.
Indiana.
When I started self-publishing, I was working on the first issue, and I'd helped Jim Steranko, the comic book artist and the film production guy and magician. I helped him with some technical stuff like setting up a web page and things like that. And I said I was doing a cover. He said, and he knew I was working digitally. He said, "Can I collaborate with you?" Because he really wanted to try to do a digital piece. And so his cover, the cover of the first issue of my comic, was a collaboration with Mr. Steranko. And it turned out great. And I got so much press. I mean, Wizard covered it in a time when nobody cared about me at all. So suddenly I was getting all this attention, and Diamond gave it a big write-up, and it really helped launch the series. I thought, why should I ever spend money on an ad? I should just invest in artists. Why? Right. So the cover of issue 2 was by the Hildebrandt brothers. And I'm like, okay, let's shoot for the moon. I went through the catalog of art directors who represents Drew Struzan, and I contacted his art director like any other client would, and said, "Here's the project." And I basically asked for the moon for very little money compared to what he would be getting for other things. And he said, I think he may have said something along the lines of, "That's a lot for what you're paying." Kind of. It was being very nice, but basically saying, "Hey, kid, cool your jets."
Mm.
So did he have like, this is my Paramount 20th Century Fox rate. This is my poor starving webcomics guy rate, like
No, I don't.
$5,000 to get you this, $2,000 to get you that.
I don't think so. I just said, "Here's my budget," and I think that's what I basically said. Here's what I want to pay for him to do a cover. I thought I was being generous, and he it fit into his schedule, So that's what it came down to. I think if I said, here's the amount of money I need it on this day, any artist will just look in their calendar and go, "Do I want that money? And can I fit that into my schedule?" And he did.
Right.
And he sent me sketches. He was wonderful through the whole process, and the cover turned out great. It's available. The original art is available on his website for sale. He opened up a gallery, and it's there. It's like 20 grand. I'm like, oh, I want it, but I'm never gonna have it.
Well, why didn't you buy it, Steve?
Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, I got a cover. I get to stare at it. It makes me extremely happy. But what Tim said about Tim Fielder said about Ingram Spark, how great it is, and how easy they make it to distribute everywhere. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. The only trick is they really. I don't know if it works for color printing, because I would have to raise the price of my book so high to make it worthwhile for me to get it through their system, to even make a quarter off of each sale. So there's value if you want to get it out there to as many people as possible. But in terms of making money, I found that I couldn't make Ingram's distribution system work. But I got my own ISBN numbers and things like that. I didn't want to use an Amazon ISBN, even for my self-published stuff.
So
KDP, Amazon's Kindle Direct will provide you with an ISBN number, but
when you buy those, don't you buy a bunch at one time for the
you buy a brick, right?
Yeah, you should. If you buy one, it's like $100. If you buy 5, if you buy 10, it's like $350 or something like that.
Yeah.
So, everybody's sitting on 5 or 6 unused ISBN numbers.
And Steve, isn't there a thing now? And I'm woefully out of practice with this. Isn't there a new thing where aren't modern books using 2 ISBNs?
Well, they are using an ASIN, which is the Amazon's number.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah.
And you can buy those too, or Amazon?
No, Amazon
assigns that.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is already an interesting conversation, and we're just kind of talking about another different angle on all the stuff we normally talk about. Like the business of comics, the ever shifting tectonic plate of trying to be a professional in modern times. I don't know if you've seen it, but and maybe you guys know because we're all pals, but Instagram nuked my account a couple months ago, and I had to start over. So I don't know, Steve. I don't know if I've
I saw that you got. I saw you sent a friend or a follow or whatever, and I'm like, okay, I thought we had followed each other. I don't know what was happening. They nuked it.
Yeah, well, it's not even a long story. It's just, I don't know.
Wasn't it like you had to re-sign in or something like that? And like they had to look at your face?
Yeah.
Like a face thing.
Yeah, like how many people look like this? Come on. Let's be real.
I saw 10 people today.
Just 8 people.
It's just, well, 7.5. So they made me jump through all these hoops. And then, like almost every 2.5 weeks, I would get another like white screen. Your account's been suspended for some TOS thing. I didn't do anything. I wish I could even say that I did something to get my account smashed. But anyway, I kind of battled with them. The funny thing about Instagram is they don't have to answer you. There's really no tech support.
Right.
Instagram. So like it went along so long that finally they were like, your thing's gone. It's been over 30 days. Sorry. So I told you this, Mike. I was like, I think I'm done. I kind of enjoy having that real estate back in my head without worrying about it. But I was like, let me go ahead and start over. So I'm starting over. So what I've been posting for the last couple of weeks is I've been posting some of my old publishing, like how to self-publish books on my Insta. kind of like really outmoded things, like how to self-publish your first comic book by Tony Caputo. I'm looking around because I don't know what I did with them. And some of the stuff in there is so old, you guys. It's like, to run a proper studio, you should have a facsimile machine. Or to run a proper studio, you should invest in a Mike Manley, a full-blown floor model copy machine,
which I used to have. Actually, the first thing I did with my first royalty check I ever got, which was for an issue of my first Marvel comic was an issue of the Transformers.
Mm-hmm.
And that comic was hot, right? Because the show was hot. And then like a year later, I got a check for something like $5,000 or $6,000 on the first royalty check. So the first thing I did was actually go out and buy a copy machine, because at that point, when I was living in media, I would have to go downtown and go to this one copy place and get, and they take the thing and, they put it on there. It'd come out, no, I can't see it. Oh, it's too light. No, it's still too light. And then, and then the guy was a dick, just a straight up bad businessman dick. And what he was doing is, like, even if the copy wasn't usable, he's trying to charge you for it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, so I made 3 copies, and it took you 4 copies to get the copy. And I would have to say, like, no, take the slider and push it all the way over here, because if you don't, it's not going to.
Right.
So, and then, you had to go down there and hope there wasn't like some old lady, copying her birth certificate or whatever. Then you were like racing FedEx, because you always wanted to make copies or you sent your stuff, right? And like the 5 o'clock was like the last time you could call to have them come pick up. So you'd be literally, and this is before cell phones, so you couldn't like be in your car on your cell phone and call. You had to go back home, pack it, fill out your vet, and then call them, and
that's your whole day. Like, you don't have time.
Like 3 or 4 o'clock, you would go, I got an hour, and I got to go into media. It wasn't that far. It was probably less than a mile. Find a place to park, run in, get your Xerox. So yeah, it's like, my life was so improved by having a Xerox machine that I didn't have to do that. And then a few years later, when I moved up and I was in Al Williamson's studio, it was even more important, because the FedEx time up there was earlier in the day.
Oh, wow.
It was earlier in the day.
The route is shorter, right?
Yeah, because that was near Scranton, and so I think 3 something was like the cutoff. So yeah. So the first thing I did, and of course now, what, $200 you get yourself a printer scanner.
Yeah, times have changed. But in even this, like, for some of the younger cartoonists or people who don't have the means to have all this kind of tech in their studio, you run into resistance just going into Staples and trying to go to the service center, because they ask you about copyright stuff. I don't know if that's ever happened to you.
You got to kirk them on the back of the neck.
Right, because it's like, okay, can you make 3 copies of this? Are you the copyright holder? Yeah, I drew it. Or like, yeah, this is my stuff.
Like Obi-Wan. Yeah, I am the copyright holder.
So I mean, like, there's just resistance everywhere, but just knowing that there's like such an interesting. It's really interesting about comics, because we all, and I'm sure we all at some point have said to somebody young, all you need is a pencil and a paper and imagination, and you can make comics. But
which is true, but nobody can see them.
Well, I mean, the reality is there is an expense to being a comic book artist or a freelancer of any stripe. It's changed a lot. And maybe we could talk a little bit about tech before we go to another topic.
Oh, that's true. That's true, because when I started, paper, pencil, and then all I needed to do was get a copy.
Right?
But you needed to have a wagon to get to FedEx.
Right. You know, I need a strong ox to get me across the bad roads of Media, Pennsylvania. You know, and you know, shoot any hostiles on the way. But it was true. And in the beginning of the first, I would say, 5 years of my career were pretty much like what the previous 50 years of comics had been. Sit down, draw it, take it into the office, you know, or ship it, right? Because that's what Al Williamson did. That's what Jack Kirby did. You know, Kirby lived in California, and he would you know, make stats. There's actually a picture I saw last week, I think on Twitter, of like him standing next to his Xerox machine that he bought in like, you know, 1970, you know, because he had to Xerox his stuff in case he shipped it to Marvel and it disappeared, you know, and then he would need, you know, copies of his work. But yeah, you know, Al Williamson worked with paper, pencil, ink. FedEx was the most advanced thing for him, you know, where he didn't have to go in the old days to the post office and send it. But between 1990 and 2005, there were so many different, like every year, like suddenly it was faxes. You got everybody faxing, and then it wasn't even email then, because when I was working at Warner Brothers, we were faxing, we weren't emailing. Now everything is emailing. You know, like you don't ever actually. I never send. When I finish this, I just scan it. I never send the original out of my house.
And what is that? You were waving, Mike. What page is that? What is? Can you say what that is?
That's a phantom. A phantom daily. I'm drawing this. Working on.
Sweet.
So and hold on, Mike. We're even missing a step. And when you scanned in your stuff, you had to FTP it, and people don't even FTP anymore.
Well, some do.
When I worked for
the last Marvel and DC jobs I did, you put it on their server. I mean, you put it in the art in the template, and then you put the template on their on their server. And King for King, when I Sunday strip, I take it and I put FTP that to their server. But what that requires you to have is computer, Photoshop, scanner,
FileZilla.
Right. So I mean, you literally have to have thousands of dollars worth of tech. When I started in 1984, I just had to have a pencil and paper. Right. I didn't have to have thousands of dollars and then actually be skilled at using each one of those.
Right. That's a whole other thing. So this leads us into our question from our best bro, El Jamal Walton. Shout out to El Jamal, part of the King Ghidorah of Jamals and Jamars. That's, if you don't know, El Jamal Walton, Jamar Nicholas, and Jamal Eigel. People can't seem to get us straight.
You're the same person. Come on. You just like wear different hats. We've never seen you all together at the same time.
I know, right?
That's Spider-Man meme of the three guys.
Jamal says, "What tech do y'all have in the studio?" So let's start with you, Steve. What's your main drivers these days? What gets you through the day?
I've been working almost exclusively on an iPad Pro for about 5-6 years. I got the first generation iPad Pro. Wasn't necessarily an early adopter, but I didn't really know I could use it for art. I kind of hoped I could, but then I used Procreate, which is an app which is available on iPad Pro, and I've been working on my comic strip, The Middle Age, with an iPad Pro for 5 years. That iPad died, so I'm on a 4th generation iPad Pro now. I have a Mac, which I do.
Big one? A big giant iPad?
Yeah, it's like it's a large screen. Then I've got my Mac desktop, which I do a lot of my lettering and color flatting on still, and then a lot of web design and graphic design. I still like the tools of Illustrator and Photoshop and the old the whole Adobe subscription. When I edit my videos, I'm using After Effects and Premiere, and then InDesign for book layouts and things like that.
You mean Quark Express? Is that what you meant?
No, LJ's right about the cost of the Adobe subscription going up. It hurts. It hurts. But
because you just can't steal a CD from somebody with Photoshop 5 on it. It don't work like that anymore.
They got you for life now. if they give you, you get on that train and you're stuck. So I use a Mac for my desktop stuff, and I use an iPad Pro for everything else. And even all my 3D modeling now is all done on an iPad Pro in a program called Nomad Sculpt.
I don't believe you do all that in an iPad, Steve.
Yeah, all of it.
The detail you put into those strips.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Bananas. Yeah. Wow. And Mike, what about you? Because I don't want to say you're a late adopter, because one thing I've always admired about Mike is he's always been on the digital cusp, right? Because he just, like, we talk about old zip drives and SideQuest drives and zip disks and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But I mean, now, I bought my first rig in 94. My first
did it have a tape drive?
My Power Mac, which I actually still have down here, it actually still works. G4.
Oh, a G4.
It weighs like 25 pounds. It still works. I can actually still surf the internet, except a lot of stuff is actually just text because the browsers are too old.
Is that you said Netscape? Is that what
Netscape? Yeah, actually on there, I think there still is. In fact, I threw out a bunch of Netscape stuff that was on an old drive that I booted, and I'm like, look, it was just like tons of old stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I realized that you have to migrate. Comics was like the last man standing in a way to migrate to desktop publishing. I don't remember, I think Andy Parks had Photoshop before I did, and so I used it at his house, and I said, okay, I got to go get the thing and learn it. So took my royalty money from Batman, and I think it cost me about 20 grand, and I got like a tower, monitor, laptop,
20 grand,
all that stuff, which was like, Photoshop was like, what, $900 or $800 or $900 back then, RAM was like, I think I had 32 megs of RAM in my laptop, and they're like, what are you doing? Are you trying to put a satellite on Mars?
You can't play Donkey Kong Country with 32.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You can't even boot your computer with that little.
Everyone's phone now is more powerful than everything we made everything on back then.
Yeah. But I realized, and there's something I do say to younger artists. You're responsible for your career in that way, and to be because the company, if you're working in the company, like if you're working at Disney and Disney says, we're using this new thing, and they have all these tech people come in, and the company come in, and they train you on it. You learn the software. You get to learn on the job. But the average cartoonist, no. You have to buy the stuff, take a class, figure it out. You have to be responsible to yourself, because the company will just say, oh, yeah, we're doing this thing, and we need it this way. And you're like, oh, okay, well, I don't have that thing.
Don't ever say that.
Yeah. Here's our server. Here's the FTP, and you're like, what's an FTP, right?
Yeah. No. Oh yeah, of course, absolutely.
Always say yes.
Yeah.
What do they say if they ask you if you're God? Say yes.
Right.
My first big freelance gig that I kind of broke off on my own and got my first client when I left the world of cubicles and corporate stuff was a client who said, we need somebody who could do this thing on burn a DVD or a CD. It was a CD. I'm sorry, it was a CD pre-DVD. They want create a Macromedia Director CD-ROM, and I was like, I can do that. Sure, I can. And I said that like on a Wednesday, and like I immediately ordered a CD burner. I ordered the software. I'm like, I can learn it over the weekend. And that client I had for 10 years. They were very happy. So it's like,
Right.
we can always do it.
I mean, I just talked to my buddy Ricardo Villagrán over Messenger today. You can do the video thing because a lot of people are older, have trouble with just like the Zoom interface, right? Like this StreamYard makes it pretty easy. You're literally just like pushing a couple buttons and it works. But the pattern is, while this technology does get easier, more of that is actually pushed off on you to know, right? And if you're a young artist in your 20s, you're going to see more change in the next 15 years than there has been in the previous 25 years because things keep changing, apps keep updating, the way the office is structured now, the way the corporations are structured now. It's just something that thinking I want to draw my comic. I just want to draw my comic or paint my picture or whatever. And you're not really thinking like, oh, shit, I've suddenly got to take thousands of images as I've created that were on this little floppy thing and change it to the round thing. And now I have to take it from that round thing and change it to the other round thing. And now they don't make an adapter for my new thing for the old thing. And so like you're constantly, there was somebody last week, I think on Facebook I saw. So some people try to get around that by, okay, I'll just put it in the cloud. Somebody's cloud thing got eaten and it like ate all their, they didn't have a backup.
They got it.
It got eaten because you don't know what happens if, I don't know, what happens if Russia uses a low yield nuke in Ukraine and it creates an EMP that affects servers in North Korea or South Korea, I should say, and it wipes out your cloud. How is that cloud backed up? You have to, and we're all producing volumes and volumes of things that are now all being converted into ones and zeros, and they are all going to constantly have to be migrated.
What about my save games of Roller Coaster Tycoon? What about that? I'm screwed.
Well, I think I talked when I interviewed Bill Sienkiewicz for Draw Magazine. He talked about he lost a lot of images because it was on like some old drive, and every drive, even a solid state drive, because I had a Western Digital solid state drive. One day it just goes, sorry,
gave up the ghost.
I won't count. And then you want to spend what, $5,000 and send it to like, the people that can supposedly do that. Is it worth that? So it's like.
Plus, and there's no excuse now that hard drives are so inexpensive. What I didn't mention was that I've got like multiple redundant.
How many hard drives do you have? How many?
4 that I can see, and I still do backup things offline. I mean, that doesn't include my time capsule. That doesn't include, the stuff I keep in Dropbox just because I know it's someplace else. I've got another copy somewhere in case I need it. But I prefer to have a backup of the Middle Age offsite. So if something happens here, at least have a copy of it someplace else.
Oh yeah, you're in Florida, so you could get hit by a hurricane and
alligator, anything. Yeah,
alligator comes in.
Alligator cane, right?
Yeah. A lot of young people don't think about that because you're repurposing material that's 20 years old and it's still making you income.
Yeah, that collection of the Astounding Space Thrills, I did lose some pieces over the years because the hard drive failed, the Mac died, and the redundant backup drive failed over the course of 23 years. And so I did have to recreate some pieces, but I didn't have to create all of it. And even back in the day, I was creating it all 300 DPI, thinking someday it'll be in print. I didn't think it was going to be like, 23 years later, but I'm sorry, I might have stepped on Jamar talking about his tech.
Oh, we didn't get to me yet. But also, hold on, we'll do me in a minute. But also, our man D Brad, what up, D Brad? D Brad says, "What about Clip Studio Paint?"
That's
you
great.
you don't use Clip, do you, Steve?
Me? No, I don't. I've dabbled, but on the iPad they want a subscription fee, and I'm a cheapskate. I did all these 3D models, all these little 3D models that got
Hold
printed.
on, let me give you the screen.
Oh no, my giant noggin in 3D.
Yeah, you asked for it.
So I've got these models that I all sculpted in Nomad Sculpt on an iPad Pro.
That's crazy.
And I don't think I ever would have even tried the software if it had a subscription fee.
Hold those up again, Steve.
Oh, I wish I had a.
So that was free. It's a free app on.
No, it's like $15.
Oh, so it's one-time fee.
Oh, there it is. Look at that. That's fantastic. And you got those printed, right? 3D printed?
Yeah. There's a vendor out of Etsy, Simon's Magic Shoppy. They do some wonderful resin printing work. Come on.
Yeah, that goes right to my address. That one right there.
Oh, man.
That's my dude.
I'm sorry. It's not. It wants to focus on my giant noggin. But yeah, and I'm talking with a vendor now about getting them made and available for everybody. So it's exciting.
Next Christmas, Santa's coming down. Like,
before
down your chimney.
Before then, there'll be a Kickstarter. I'm already. Oh, Tracy, that's wonderful.
I love it. Before we talk about me, what I think is also interesting is that now we're seeing a switch from cartoonists and creatives and such who had giant rigs, but now are starting to downsize, right? It's like, do you need a desktop in 2022 when you can do everything on your iPad, right?
Well, to me, the issue is that the new computers don't have the USB and the FireWire and all that other stuff. So then you have to go buy an adapter.
No, sure.
Right? Just like it was back in the old days, right? When you went from SCSI to whatever you have, the back of your computer had all these like giant things plugged in because you went from like a 16 pin to an 8 pin to a little thing that went into the other thing.
Well, now it's all AirDrop. I mean, I have it on my iPad. I basically just drag it onto my desktop computer, and I drag it onto my phone. And then if I'm working on some text on my desktop, I hit copy. I go over to my iPad. I hit paste, and they're all talking to each other. And so
it's the devil's magic.
Yeah, exactly.
What is
the
this
idea? At some point, someone will be upset that it can't do that. So it's all yeah. Hopefully, we get rid of all this. I mean, apart from power, we're going to be stuck with cables for that for a while. But
I thought there was wireless power too, right? Isn't there?
Yeah, there is. It's just slower.
So yeah, I mean, so my story real quick is that I had a 29-inch 2009 iMac, and they don't make them that big anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That was, I think it was a 27-inch, and I think they only make 24s. And I heard they were promising to make like a 32-inch iMac, but I don't think that happened. And it gave up the ghost probably right after I turned in the first Leon book. And I haven't. I'm kind of in between gigs right now. I haven't figured out what's the next piece of tech for me yet. What's really fortuitous for me is that I have a lot of Apple stuff. Like my desktops have always been Macs, but I don't like iPads. Sorry, bro. It's that pencil. I hate the Apple Pencil. I'm sorry. It hurts. It hurts my sensitive Pisces hands.
Well, you can buy a grip thingy.
But come on, man. It's like I don't want to like Steve doesn't want to pay for Clip Studio. I don't want to have to pay for comfort for that hard ass piece of plastic pencil.
No, I do get that. I eventually, after working on the Middle Age for a number of years, I got golfer's elbow basically from all that little chainmail stuff I put in. I mean, after a while, you do that a billion times, and stuff's going to start wearing down.
You got to farm that out. Chainmail.
Yeah, get the staff. I'll get my. Have an episode focusing on how we hire our first staff, like how we hire the team.
You need a chainmail Charlie you're gonna have to have in the studio to do that for you, Steve. I have found a lot of luck with Samsung products. Like I have a Samsung Galaxy Tab 6 SE or something like that. It's like a little dude, but that S Pen is beautiful. And then what I don't think I have it in front of me. They have proprietary digital pencils that work on Samsung stuff, and Statler, the pencil people, they make a version of it, and I bought the. Hold on, I'll put this shit on the
Oh,
screen.
that's cool.
Look at that! Isn't that cool?
So that is actually a digital pencil.
Yeah, it's a digital pencil with a digital eraser on it. So it has the grip of a regular pencil. This is a jumbo one, and they also make a slimmer one. And like, I would rather draw with this than that Apple Pencil. You can like stick a needle in my eye. No offense, Steve Conley, but it's just like it feels better. Like it's got a rubber tip. Pause, and it just like I am more comfortable drawing pages with that than like that.
Right.
Like I feel like with the Apple Pencil, I'm trying to break a creme brulee open every time I hit the screen, and I just can't. And maybe that's another thing about the sensitivities of cartoonists, because we talk all the time about tech, and we don't, we stop short of saying you need this to do your job. We never say that because
everybody is so
Right.
persnickety about their own individual.
And it's more like, this works for me, it might not work for you.
Right.
It's
your mileage may vary, as I say in Draw Magazine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have I use Clip Studio, and I probably started really using it because when my sister, Mimi, was here, she was using it, so I got to, and then she was actually using the Cintiq, and so I decided, okay, I'll buy one. Here's somebody who's using it. She was better at it than I was. So that helped, having somebody, so if I had a problem, like you program all the hotkeys and all that, she could totally help me with that. And now I do Judge Parker all digital with Clip Studio. I still pencil the Phantom traditional, right? I still will draw traditional.
beautiful.
In fact, I have a huge over here. Here's just part of the stack. I have a giant stack of originals. So I still will draw it traditional because I like drawing.
How big are those pages, Mike?
This is 14 by 17.
I thought so. It looked larger than 11 by 17. Those are
14
huge.
by 17. So this is the biggest I can get on my scanner. Right. This is the biggest I can get on my scanner. So I still love to draw it traditionally.
That's fantastic.
I still like to draw it traditionally. I get tired of drawing digital. Part of my thing is my brain and my sensitivity to drawing form and all that comes from years of drawing on paper. So I have a certain feel, like when I'm drawing on the paper, I have a feel, and I don't get that when I'm drawing digital, right? So, and then I also get more eye strain. By the end of the day, if I'm drawing on the iPad, on the digital tablet, my eye, staring at that blue light.
Yeah.
Now I know our buddy Scott Cohn has a pair of those blue blocking glasses that blocks the.
Oh, those Ric Flairs he wears.
Yeah. So I was actually thinking of getting that over my glass, like a visor. Because I have read some things about long-term effect of the blue light of the screens affecting your retina. That's the other thing. We've been using this tech, which is constantly changing, for like 20 years, right? And in another 20 years, who knows how it's, probably everything will be wireless or whatever. But so yeah, and because of the pandemic, my assistant Leanne couldn't no longer come over to the house, so I penciled the stuff and sent it to her to ink the backgrounds digitally. So that's when we really started using it. I ink the Phantom in Clip Studio, and it's great. I mean, it's so much better than Photoshop. And whenever I'm in Photoshop and I have to like draw anything in Photoshop, I feel like I'm using like a rock or something. It's a performance. Not maybe I have to make a custom brush, and I know there's people that make all these custom brushes and they adjust the sensitivity and all that. But again, I would prefer pencil and paper and traditional inks. But I mean, everything is a problem because you can't even find good ink now.
Right.
Right. You can't find good ink. Or like the other day, Walter Simonson was complaining that he bought the Strathmore 500.
It's garbage now.
And it's bleeding because the Strathmore 500 is shit paper now. It's just bad. That used to be like the most expensive and like the best paper you could buy, and now so that's actually why I use the Strathmore 300 pad. That's what I buy. I buy the Strathmore 300.
We're getting some good healthcare tips in the chat, you guys. So, Mike, people might ask, how come you don't cut it down?
Because I can do 2 up and put it on my scanner. Mm-hmm. When I sell them, I can take it and cut them apart.
Mm-hmm. And that's also just a time-saving thing, right? You don't have a Sunday to cut paper.
Everything I do is a time saving.
Mm-hmm.
Everything with comic strips, just because I have to produce basically 14 strips a week, right? I produce 2 strips. Everything. If you say 5 minutes on Monday and 20 minutes on Tuesday, and then by Thursday you've saved 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Which might mean that you go to bed at midnight and not at 4 a.m.
Yo, facts.
And I mean, all the stuff we're talking about to me is all about what works for you effectively to produce the kind of work you want in the time you need to be able to produce it. And sometimes there are choices that you have to compromise that you make that just work the best. Like when I work, I know a lot of people, and Steve was just like talking about the tennis elbow. Al Williamson had tennis elbow. Lee Weeks had tennis elbow. I know a lot of other people that had a problem, and then they basically have to learn how to adjust their situation, their board, the height of their table, where they put, because it's a repetitive motion thing, right?
Sure.
And you're drawing. What I find is if I draw all day, or ink all day on the digital tablet, if I incline my board like I do for regular drawing, and today I start getting. But if I'm drawing on paper, I don't, because I'm never in the same. When you're on the tablet, you've got even if the tablet's 21 inches, you're basically working in an area that's about that big. Right? You got a big screen and you can see it, but you're literally working in an area with your pen point. You're like, right? You're inking, you're making a line, and your hand is literally just doing this motion over and over thousands of times in a day.
Yeah, well, I find that I haven't had eye strain with my iPad yet. I mean, I do use it, ridiculously long hours, and have used it for years and haven't had a problem. Partly because I think I've turned the brightness down. That was a step to save battery life, but it's not that bright. I mean, I think I don't need it to be. I mean, I was always drawing in the best lit conditions, so the idea that this is backlit at all, but I haven't had the problem yet. But I'll keep an eye out for it. I mean, I'll keep an ear out for it or something like that.
And Steve, you don't keep your iPad do you put it on on a kind of like a wedge or like on an arm or anything like that? You just hunch. How do you?
It's usually on my lap. It's usually like I've got one leg up. I might rest it here and work, or if I'm in like a coffee shop, in the olden times, in the before times, or if I'm tucked away now in one, like with in a corner away from 9 feet away from everybody, I'll just hold it with one hand and draw.
You don't have like one of those like covers that like turns into a stand or anything?
I do. I find that there are issues with the iPad in that depending on the angle, I can get a stray line shooting off in an angle. If for some reason there's even though if you turn off palm registering your palm, there could be the effect of like the undo effect or something like that, like from 2 points touching the screen at the same time. So holding it with my hand is better. I've never found an angle that I like. I have my Cintiq on an arm, but the iPad, you kind of want to move it more freely than a Cintiq. You know what I mean? Also, I want to have angles. Sometimes I rotate the artwork, but you just want to, rotate with your elbow. You want to draw with your elbow. That's how I learned how to draw.
Right.
Right.
Like, we learned it in the streets, like the old days.
Yeah, you draw with your whole arm. Your shoulder should be doing some of the drawing too.
Yeah.
There's a good question from. Hold on, the chat's acting up. Hold on 1 second. We got a good question.
You got to jump the chat.
Yeah, I don't know. It's acting funny for a second, but our buddy Kenny Wong's, where's Stunt Ken at? He just asked about repetitive injuries. Have any of you guys ever gotten trigger finger? Any repetitive stress injuries or things like that?
I got carpal tunnel back in the day, but it was from using the keyboard where
back in high school, Steve.
I'm a million years old now. So, but holding down the command key to copy, paste, all that kind of thing, you're basically putting your thumb down on the command key on the keyboard, and you're just rotating your fingers more and more while you've got the mouse going. And so eventually I had carpal tunnel. But I had to get a shot for it and basically keep off of it. I haven't had a problem since, but I just do everything on the iPad now and haven't had, I don't use a keyboard as much.
Right. How about you, Mike? And
no,
Mike, you're like the king of drawing. So
yeah, but I'm very aware of the wear and tear on my arm and my back, or legs from sitting.
Yeah.
So I've been doing it a long time now, like almost 4 years. So I know when I have to take a break. I know how I have a lap board. It sits flat because you have your drawing table and you have those 2 little knobs that raise and lower your table. Well, that little knob I have set so where I can take my lap board and lay it flat right there, and then I can take my Cintiq, put that flat. So when I'm drawing here, and I either can look at the Cintiq or I can look at my monitor here. And I find that then I don't have the strain. If I elevate it and work on the Cintiq and do this all day, eventually my forearm gets sore, right? So I know I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to get an ergonomic arm. I'm not going to do any of that stuff because all that's going to do is put strain on my hand. And everybody I know, even people who are 20 years younger than me or more, all have that problem from working like this all day, right? It's just, if you're going to do that for 40 years, I don't see how anyone's not going to have carpal tunnel syndrome. Mailmen and people who do other jobs who sort mail, right? You do stuff like that. They end up getting carpal tunnel because I know several mailmen, and a lot of them have had to have. It's like you get bad knees for going up and down steps. You get bad forearms from doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Wow.
And what about you, Jamar, with drawing Lee on the extraordinary, is it extraordinary or extraordinary?
It's the same word.
Okay. How do you say it?
It's the extraordinary.
Extraordinary. How do you? I want to know how to say it officially.
Extraordinary.
Extraordinary. When you're drawing, is it all pen and paper?
No, I did this first book digitally. I have a Huion tablet.
Julian, what is that?
Huion. Yo, I'm the crusty critic for Draw Magazine. I'll put it on the screen right now. I'm over Wacom. Sorry, Wacom.
No iPads, no Wacom.
It's a wrap or Wacom. There's guys in the game that are just doing it as good and maybe better for a lot cheaper. Like I know a lot of people that are rocking with X Pen. Well, like I know a lot of people that are rocking with X Pen tablets and the Huion line, the Canvas line, and we all have buddies who have Wacoms who are always like, "Yo, can you find a new driver or my shit don't work?" You know what I mean? There's always some sort of like crisis.
I accidentally upgraded.
Yes.
Right? Like all that is real. And like I had this
That could be a podcast. I accidentally upgraded.
Mm-hmm.
Help! Calgon, take me away. And like who's like nobody has the time to mess with that kind of stuff when you're on deadline. But
do you guys turn off your automatic updates?
Yeah. I don't update unless things stop working and then I have to update it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this before. The worst thing you can do is start picking with your tech in the middle of a job.
Yeah.
Well, that's when your tech always breaks. It breaks at 5:00 on Friday.
Right.
You get a job due Monday, and then it's like
absolutely
on Friday, right?
You're buying a refurbished iMac from the Apple Store. Like it's Friday afternoon, and it's awful. It's awful.
Yeah, don't do that.
Well, do you guys have? I mean, this is the other thing. So you sort of need backup tech. Like I have my laptop, which I'm on here, but I have my iMac, which was now I'm on. I forget whatever the last update that chip can take because it basically shit the bed.
I love that
into these computer guys, and they were able to get it going, but I realized that I can't go to like Mojave or whatever the new one I don't even know what is the latest Mac.
Is it a New Sierra or High Sierra or something like no, it's Mojave, isn't it? I think that's it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Something like that.
It's not getting installed is what it is.
Yeah, it's called Jaguar. Jaguar. However that guy always says it in the commercial.
Jaguar.
Extraordinary.
Extraordinary. Oh, yeah. Tim says Monterey.
Oh, right. Okay, there you go.
My favorite cheese, yeah.
Yeah. When they get to Colby, everybody's screwed.
Gouda.
That's right. Yeah. But
go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I can't go any further. So I have my laptop, and if this craps the bed, at least I can still work on my laptop until I were to be able to buy a new machine, right? But then again, one of the things that I found was that now that they don't make the USB and they also don't have the HDMI port, for the video cable, you got to buy another little thingy, which they don't tell you. You have to figure all this out yourself.
That's how they get you.
Yeah. And then it's like you buy your computer and you get home like, oh, okay. Ching, ching, ching. Can I hook everything up? And like, where does this go? Oh.
I got to be a section in Best Buy.
Yeah. I got to go back to Best Buy.
Stuff and you didn't know you needed right here.
It's an end cap, all the shit that we should have told you before you left in the first place.
It's like you just have to, that's should be right? Love.
It's stuff you can't wait for Amazon for.
Right. Yeah. And you hope that when you go, there's somebody there because I ended up buying an adapter, right? So when I bought my laptop, it didn't have the USB, and they said, went to Apple's website and it says, get this adapter, which I did. And it didn't fit my Wacom tablet. So, okay, so I had to go over to Best Buy, and then you hope that the tech person at Best Buy is not a teenager who doesn't know. First of all, runs away from you when they see you come in the store,
No,
and then
an adult. No.
right, they tell you. I had to take a picture of what I wanted, right, of what I had, and he goes, "No, no, no, you need this." So I was actually able to work, but again, he's like, "What? That was a whole day."
Mm-hmm.
A whole day I lost of production just because I didn't have one little stupid thing.
Yeah, our buddy Matt Ringo. I don't have my coffee. Sip of coffee for the Ringo dynasty. Matt says, I have a huge Rubbermaid container full of obsolete cables, connectors, and doodags and whirligigs. That's a thing. Oh, nice. Representing that sticker. I didn't get a sticker, Matt Ringo. It sucks. Now
I
you're off the screen.
last year, was it last year? Last summer, I started cleaning out a bunch of stuff, and that's what I had. I had like all these like power cords with the 12-volt and the this thing and the that thing and the other thing and this thing. Yeah, I mean, it was just like a half the garbage can was just full of that stuff.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a SCSI cable that some USB that connects to like a Lego. On the other end, like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah, yeah.
This is to charge up my handspring Palm Pilot clone.
Yeah, I love my Palm Pilot. You made me think of SCSI. I remember my first, and I have a question for you guys, and then we'll start wrapping it up. My first big purchase, and Mike already talked about his first big purchase, your first big purchase was the copy machine, right, Mike? Was that your first big piece? I didn't get that far, and I want to know. Do you remember how much that copy machine cost? And that's like 85. When did you get that?
It was like $3,500.
How many more payments you have to go on that copy?
You know, yeah, it was $3,500.
Oh,
and then you would have I actually bought two over.
You bought two copiers
over the time, because eventually what happened was, the first copier. See, here's the other thing. We were talking about this the other day because I'm looking to buy a new printer. What you don't often know when you go to buy something and you have to start to do a little research is you go to Amazon, you go to Best Buy, wherever you see this new printer, new object, whatever you're going to buy. But you might not know that, okay, that actually is the end of that product's life. And then next month is going to have the SWF5Z2, right?
Electric Boogaloo.
Right. And then what happens is, which is what happened with my first copier and even my second copier, they don't make parts and they can't find parts. They don't keep making parts. So for a while, they still made the drum that went inside, right? And that drum would eventually get dirty or get scratched, and you'd to get a new drum. Well, one of the reasons why I ended up going and getting my Epson and all that other stuff was that they didn't make parts for it anymore, and the guy couldn't find any parts. The guy because I had a service contract with, I think it was KDI, I had a service contract with him, and the guy basically says, you can still buy toner, but if there's a line on your drum, I can't fix that because they don't make a part for that. And then I think eventually what made me stop using it was that it kept saying that it had a paper jam.
But there was no jam.
That whole thing apart, and there was no paper jam. And the guy came, and it was just like, it just shit the bed. It's like, I got a paper jam, and I can't work. So,
Did you give it a Viking funeral? I don't remember how did we get rid of that?
I think it was
shoot it with flaming arrows.
I think that I actually threw out in the garbage, and then the other one I had, I had a bunch of stuff taken from like 1-800 junk, and they took it.
Were they like? And our last thing about this copier, because it just fascinates me. what was 85, 84, 80, whenever you got this thing, that wasn't a common occurrence that like a residential would be ordering a piece of office equipment.
Well, not like that. No,
Right.
no. But I think eventually, like I said, I mean, I made so many copies of artwork over the years for my own records. When I was in Sherrill Williamson's studio, I copied tons and tons and tons of artwork that he had. So I have, a really nice collection of, and it made beautiful Xeroxes. The Xeroxes that it made, the copies it made, looked like a stat. It was like really nice, But yeah, I mean, you're always going to be battling tech, just like Steve, you work with web developers and doing stuff. I mean, nobody's doing the old, everybody was using, whatchamacallit.
We're going to say Rubylith. What are you going to say?
No, that program that you used to use for animation and everything.
Oh, like Lunchbox.
A Flash?
Flash.
Yeah.
Nobody's Flash.
Adobe. What was the other Adobe thing that everybody was using? You kept getting the thing to update your Adobe driver.
Oh, right. That was probably Flash, but there was also Macromedia's Direct or Adobe Director had like one. Right. It was like there's a ton of them. Shockwave.
Right. Yeah. Oh, you need to update your Silverlight or whatever. It was always updating things like that. And everybody. And in fact, I took a Flash class in 2000 to learn Flash, right? And then everybody was using that. And now nobody. Well, Flash is like what, HTML7 now or whatever. They incorporated some of the functions right to another.
It basically died when the iPad came out. Basically, the iPad was going to be the new way everyone's going to look at the internet, and Flash was not supported on the iPad, and so Flash kind of went away. And there's a lot of arguments why it should go away, but it felt a little political.
What is the new animation software that everybody uses? It's
Toon
it's
Boom?
like it's Toon Boom something. And I remember when Toon Boom came out and people were like, what is this? It was almost like that software you get in the Staples or the spinner rack. And you're like, I'm not buying this.
Right.
If then it turned into like the real thing. And I remember I had it, and you can you can almost see like on a heat wave on a hot day, you could see the ripples in the air. Like things were going to change, and you had to decide if you're going to get on that bus or not. You know what I mean? So like maybe my question to you guys is, and hold on, I have a banner for it. This is going to be our last question for the night, guys. This is called, Why Didn't They Tell Me? So I'm going to ask my brothers in arms, what did you learn from Hard Knocks in your cartooning career that you wish somebody had told you so you didn't have to go through it?
Well, you've had more time to think about this, Jamar. Do you want to kick it off?
No, I just threw it out there. That's you know what that is, Steve? My undiagnosed ADHD at work. That's what that is. It just happens. So, I mean, I'll start. And probably one of my things was, because I was just talking about this at the beginning of the podcast, how I collected how-to books, because this is pre-internet, it's pre-Google, it's pre all of that stuff, and you had to learn things by going.
It was pre-how-to.
Right. It was even pre-DIY. You had to learn things by going outside of your industry and looking at other stuff. I was reading books on marketing, not about making comic books.
Right.
Or publishing, not about making comic books. Like I even talked about how in Texas, I went to a print shop, like a printer, with the whole, like, what do you call it? Like the big rolling gate printers and all of that. So I learned how that process worked, because in Philly, I would ask people like printers if they made comic books, they didn't know how to do it.
Right.
You remember that? They were like,
yeah,
we can't do that. Well, what do you mean? Is you do this and you put the nah.
And the thing is, we can even tell when a comic was made by people who don't know what comics are. They feel wrong. you know.
I almost did the DiCaprio gif. right there. So, I think maybe my thing was less about publishing and more about just navigating the industry as a whole. Like, networking is so important, and I think I was on a good clip of that. But there's like a lot of stuff, and this is kind of what I was going to get at. The more I've been talking about comics lately, the more people talk about how nobody really knows what they're doing in comic books. And when it comes down to like making deals and handshakes and stuff, you just hope for the best. And I think maybe that's more from indie world where we came from, and maybe less from Mike's world, where there were contracts and Jim Shooter trying to fist fight you in a hallway, that we didn't really come up with. So I just wonder, if there's any lessons that you learned the hard way, any hard knocks in comics that you guys went through.
Well, I would say that it's all hard knocks, but I talked about this a little bit the other day when I made my post on Neil Adams on Facebook. I was very aware as a teenager that the history of the business was that it was not generally kind to you the older that you got. And there were many old cartoonists or older cartoonists who ended up not being happy or ripped off or unemployed the older that they got. And there were basically sort of three main artists that did not happen to that I could think of. One was Will Eisner, because he got out of comics and he had that PS magazine, and he was very entrepreneurial and very business minded, which he was in the beginning when he was doing The Spirit, because he was producing that strip and in that newspaper section and everything. The second is Joe Kubert, because he was very smart and very entrepreneurial, ran his own publishing early on, had the school, so he did not have to dance to try to get work the older he got, right? And then there was Neil Adams, because he did advertising. He came from advertising. He was doing advertising before he was doing comics. And they were businessmen, and they dealt with other businessmen. When you saw pictures of Neil Adams, he was wearing a shirt and a tie and not a T-shirt with Thor on it.
What?
Or Batman, right?
Yeah.
And I was very aware of that fact as a teenager, that those guys did well because they were not poor cartoonists. They didn't act like poor cartoonists. They obviously were very passionate about it. And then the other thing is that what has happened in my generation, I suppose, because I'm not in the Bronze Age. We're in the Tin Age or whatever. The older you get, the more your history editorially is erased, because the people who were your editors are gone. And when they go, your history with the company goes, right? So when I came in the 80s, Julie Schwartz was still working, and there was all Mark Grunwald and all Carl Potts and Danny Finger. All these guys came in from 1984 to 96 when I went in animation. All those people knew me. They knew my history. They knew what I did. They knew what I was good at. They knew about my deadlines, saving somebody's ass from the fire, all that stuff, right? And then when I came back to do comics in the early 2000s, after a few years of working mostly in animation, that's when Marvel imploded and kind of DC imploded a little bit. And all those people are gone. Archie Goodwin was gone. All the people that, Denny O'Neil was gone. All the people that knew me and knew what I did. Now you got a new person. Maybe they're a fan. Maybe they know what you did. Maybe they don't. The last thing I did for Marvel, editor, a nice guy, but he didn't know about Darkhawk. He didn't know he knew I drew it, right? And they're doing the 30th anniversary, but he doesn't know my history in Marvel.
This is like last year or whatever, like recently.
Yeah. He doesn't know my history in Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
All the people I worked with are, with the exception of maybe 2-3 people industry wide, are all gone. I mean, they're not working editorially.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I was not thinking about when I was younger, because you're just working and you see people and, you know, you go in and out. Maybe somebody left, but things are pretty steady. But, you know, we work in a very unsteady environment, you know. I mean, I was working on Ren and Stimpy, right? And I was a head background designer. I started working on that in the beginning of the year, and then about a month into it, they put the show on hold. And
On the new one, not on the old one, on the new
on
one.
the new one, yeah,
Wow.
the new one that was in production. And then they were like, we're kind of stopping right now. So it's like one of those things, like literally Monday you have a job, Friday you don't have a job. You don't know why you don't have a job. You know, you hear scuttlebutt about maybe stuff or whatever, but I mean, you have no control over any, like the people that went in Monday at Netflix
Mm-hmm.
working on their show, and 4:30 on a Friday they call you into a meeting and go, take all your shit home with you today. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, and it was funny because they had the meeting for Ren and Stimpy, and they're like, well, you know, put things on hold. And within 45 minutes, my access to all the servers and you know,
Wow.
Slack, we were using Slack. Oh, everything.
3PO, shut everything down.
Right. Shut down all the trash compactors. Yeah. So I'm a suspicious person because of my experience.
Yeah.
I don't ever fully trust any corporation. I never feel that you can ever trust anybody 100% that you're working with, because the way these structures are now, Paramount can say something, or Viacom can say, oh shit, we're $30 billion in debt and we need to go through and like start checking boxes.
Right.
And that box is going to be the box you're in. And it has nothing to do with your performance. It has nothing to do with anybody else's performance. It has nothing to do with the quality of the storyboard. You could have done the best storyboards or the best backgrounds, the best graphic design. It just, the bean counter comes in and go, this whole thing is
right. Which is what we just saw at Netflix. Right.
right. And I think that is the way the future is going to be, because Monday your stock drops 40%. Tuesday, people are getting jettisoned from the companies. And I think you have to always be aware of that. And I know I've talked to younger people, and when you say that, sometimes they're thinking like, you're being negative, you're a Debbie Downer or whatever. But it's like, you know, I always felt kind of funny about the Ren and Stimpy thing, to be quite honest, right? I was
you never quit the other projects you were on, right?
Right.
Yeah,
I never quit the other projects. It was a lot hard spinning all those plates, but because I got to listen to that little voice. And my little voice is a suspicious little voice, because it's had enough experience now to be suspicious. Right. And so that's what I've learned. I've learned to trust my suspicious voice. But, you know, nobody ever told me that, you know.
right.
Nobody ever said, you know, by the way, kid, you know, oh, there you go. You know, you shouldn't have trusted me, you know. And they won't. And they won't, right? They will not tell you that. You have to just, I think, operate on the fact that greed has never been greedier And if Paramount, tomorrow Star Trek Brave New Worlds comes out, if it does not hit a solid, home run, if it doesn't get, it's probably done 2 years. You might get another year, or you might not. Now look at Netflix, man. Netflix, you get 1 year, right? And then they don't renew you.
Right.
And I see on Twitter all the time, and Jamar and I were talking about this the other day. I see on Twitter all the time, young 20, 30 something animation professionals saying, hey, my job is ending next month. I'm looking for work. Right?
Mm-hmm.
What a dicey situation to be in. You got to plan. Well, what if I don't get that next job? And I'm living in a place that's very expensive, like Los Angeles, And so I'm just kind of paranoid. That's one of the reasons why I did not end up moving up to Connecticut or New York City when I first started, because it was so much more expensive.
Right.
And I figured, well, let's say I have a couple lean, I've never had, the lean times, but I thought, man, the apartments there are like twice or three times as expensive as the apartment in Philly. So maybe I better have the apartment in Philly rather than, New York. So,
yeah.
So that's kind of what I learned.
That's, I love it, Mike. That's, as Stone Cold Steve Austin once said, DTA, don't trust anybody. Steve Conley, how about you?
Oh my God, I'm
follow that. Follow that,
well,
Steve.
What do I wish I knew that they never told me? It's like a laundry list. I've just failed it. So here's the thing. I think finish every project and come up with I would say, I wish I knew to come up with an exit strategy for every comic, so that if I was going to do bloop and if the rug is going to get pulled out from under me, make sure that I have an ending. So if I have to end it short, I have a way to get out of the story in a way that it can still feel self-contained. Because if life intrudes, if illness comes up, if family problems, or you get a giant project that you have to set everything else aside for, that I have a strategy to end the comic if it's not going to be peanuts that I work on until the day I die. And I never really, a lot of my early projects, I started each one of them like, okay, this is the project I'm going to do to the day I die. And it was that line that the relationship guy, Dan Savage, says, where it's like every relationship ends until one doesn't. And that's like these comic projects. Every one of them ends until one doesn't. And I feel like if they're going to end, I should have planned for it ahead of time. And I kind of wish I had done that with Bloop, with Astounding Space Thrills, to put a bow on them in a way that I don't feel like they're open chapters in my life that I haven't closed. And but the Middle Age is ongoing, so that'll last forever. I don't need to learn anything there, right?
Well, keeping that in mind, if you said, okay, look, I can see something's going to come up, so I'm going to have to stop Middle Age, would you try to get to the point where you could stop it and return to it, or would you just try to really tie it off?
No, I right now, even if another project came up, I could end the Middle Age gracefully, because my plan was, even though it's on episode 280 now, when I started it, I knew it could end at 50. I had a way to end it so that if the Patreon support wasn't there, patreon.com/Steve Conley, if the Patreon support wasn't there, or if the Kickstarters weren't as successful as they were, if basically the audience said, that's cute, but we're not that into it right now. Or if the audience isn't there, because again, I put my work out in front of everybody because I know that's going to be, most people aren't going to like it. So if there's not enough of a critical mass to have the thing continue, then I wanted to be able to just have a self-contained thing, so that when I started the next thing, whatever will follow the Middle Age, that I would at least have this self-contained thing that I could offer to my Patreon supporters, or have as a printed, an Ingram printed book that I could have on my table at comic conventions. But planning for the ending and giving myself an exit strategy if I can't get if I don't get to play out the long game, that at least I can truncate it and still make it feel, I don't know, like if A New Hope was the only Star Wars movie, I'll mention that today. If A New Hope were the only Star Wars movie, that would have been fine.
Right.
So I think I need to design things in that way that even if I only get to do one chapter, one section of it, that should be sufficient. And that was the thing I wish I had done from the beginning, because I think I would have more self-contained things, more self-contained projects along the way. Now that I'm in my dotage.
And that's the bottom line, because Steve Conley said so. That's a Stone Cold Steve Austin reference.
You're all with the wrestling moves. You're coming off the turnbuckles tonight.
That's right. I'm dropping the elbow on this conversation. I think this will be a perfect place to stop. Guys, thank you. We're back. The numbers were high tonight. The love is real. The love is there. Thank you for everybody that hung out with us and watched us. Thank you from our tried and true penciliers. Thank you for the people that came from Steve Conley's camp. Steve is a fantastic stream. What's your stream schedule, Steve?
Tuesdays and Thursdays on Twitch, starting at 4 Eastern time. It's also on YouTube. It's on Twitch and YouTube. It might be Twitch exclusive at some point or another. But follow me on both. So it's twitch.tv/Steve Conley and youtube.com/Steve Conley art.
Oh, I love it.
And you update your social media all the time, letting people know when you're going.
Yeah. I'm a pest.
Yeah, you're getting a lot of love. Matt Waringo says that was so good. Thank you for
Matt.
coming back, and thanks for joining the show.
I'm just keeping the seat warm until Brett comes back.
Well, he said I talked to him. He might come back, be a fourth wheel from time to time, but he's got some other things that he's trying to work on right now.
That's great. Hey, DEG.
Hey, thanks, Shelly. DEG is pizza time, pizza party time. Well, guys, I feel good. I think the love is real. We'll be back here next week, Wednesday at 8 p.m. For my esteemed friends and guests. Co-host Mike Manley, Steve Conley. You ready, Steve? Don't forget.
I was born ready.
Wash those Kirby hands. Give it to him. Yeah.
I gotta go. I'm sorry. I gotta go. My Ditko.
The love is real, yo. We'll see you next week. Get some sleep.